Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we'll be talking about the effect of the coronavirus outbreak or COVID-19 on businesses. I have spoken about this already in one of my earlier videos, but then in Turkish. But I've had a lot of requests to also record this video in English. So here we go. So before we take the video forward, I'd like to ask you a question, and please have a short thought about it. And let's see in the remainder of the video whether we were thinking alike on the matter. The question that I'd like to ask you is as follows. So other than the fact that the virus outbreak, of course, potentially is affecting our health, in what other way has it had a major effect on our lives? Assuming that you've had your thought, let me give the answer from my perspective, and let's see how it goes. So I'd say that one of the biggest effects of the virus in our lives is by means of its effect on our physical movement. So what do I mean by this? So in a lot of ways, governments and municipalities have limited the way in which we can freely move through curfews, through restrictions, through lockdowns, and that simply limits us being able to easily go from A to B, right? So secondly, psychologically, we have become more cautious because we're afraid of getting sick. And if we don't want to get sick for 100%, we should stay at home. Sometimes we can't do anything else but go out. But this also limits, and in this sense, we are limiting ourselves in the way in which we are moving around. So let's take this to the arena of businesses. A lot of businesses are actually very dependent on people doing physical purchases simply because they don't have any other channel that is at least equally worth in terms of sales and with that income. So think about it. A lot of businesses are just physical. An amusement park, a museum, a cinema. They cannot, at least they are not built around generating income in other ways than having people physically getting out of their home and coming to their business. Now, there are also exactly the other side of the medallion. So other types of businesses that have actually moved their business to the digital platform. Certain supermarkets are actually selling online their goods and then transporting the goods to you. Other companies are not having you physically come over, but actually are streaming movies to your home. And a lot of companies actually are selling their goods through online buy and sell platforms, right? So there are actually a lot of businesses that are actually already using digital platforms for their sales, and it will, of course, will be more than logical to assume that these businesses are much less affected by the virus outbreak. Then there are also certain purchases that we will be able to be making, but we simply may want to delay them. Why? Because it's an uncertain time. We don't know whether we will keep our jobs. We don't know what will be happening to the economy. And in such times, people tend to save rather than to spend. And this delaying of our purchases, of course, also harms businesses that are normally counting on having similar sales as they had the previous year, for example. So let's make this a bit more clear with some examples from real life industries. So if we think about the transportation sector, it's severely harmed by the virus outbreak because it's completely dependent on physically moving people from A to B. So what you see currently going on in the aviation sector is that planes incur severe losses simply because people can't get in the plane or don't want to get in the plane. They can't get in the plane because countries have locked down, and so they don't accept passenger travel. And other times, in countries where it is allowed, people don't want to get into the plane because it's a closed space and people are afraid from getting ill, right? The aviation industry is based on the trust that we are safely being able to go from A to B, and that is then also what manifests in such a situation. We are afraid that we won't be able to get safely from A to B because we might get the illness. So on the other side, if we think about logistics, so the transportation of goods, actually this industry has flourished in this situation because a lot of people have moved their physical purchases to the digital platform, and these goods of course have to be brought to your homes, and assuming that there is no teleportation invented yet, which would have actually also helped the aviation industry, assuming that that's not there, we need someone to get our goods to us, just like we would need a plane to take us from A to B. So why is all of this a problem? So if we are purchasing less physically, for example, or if we are simply delaying our purchases, this means that businesses are selling less and that their income drops, right? So their revenue goes down. And a major risk that comes with this is that their profits also will come down. And profits we can calculate by subtracting costs from income. So in this situation, businesses are trying to save their profitability to not go bankrupt. So there are certain things that they try to do to keep their heads above the water and to sustain their livelihood. One of the things are increasing their income. So some businesses have tried to come up with new products, and they have tried to actually diversify the amount of products that they're selling. Some retailers have, for example, started to sell masks. Some technology businesses have actually started to produce health equipment, because these are goods that are very much in demand in these times. Other businesses have actually tried to cut their costs. They have tried to fire people. They have tried to close down units. And a big issue actually for companies' livelihood in this case is when they are reducing their investments. So certain things that are not only going to affect them in the short term, but also in the long term. Because if we assume that this virus at some point is going to disappear, companies also need to be competitive after the virus. So certain companies have actually reduced their research and development budget. Others have reduced their marketing budget. And of course, this can have serious consequences for competitiveness after the virus period. Then there's another problem, and this is a more global problem. Companies have, in their efforts to cut costs, have reduced their CSR expenditures, so their social responsibility investments. They have reduced, and this is a problem because these are, of course, expenditures for the greater good, right? Trying to alleviate the life quality of people who have it less. And if we are cutting down on this in periods where already it is gloomy, then of course certain parts of the society are going to be hit twice as hard. So finally, in their efforts that they are performing to keep their head above the water, companies are also reaching out to external financing. So to debt, basically, and this debt can come from banks, state banks or private banks, and can come from governments. Certain governments are, for example, bailing out companies, and a government bailout is relatively lucrative because you can get large sums of money for low interest, but sometimes governments will actually want a lot from you in return. So that's something to consider. Lufthansa only recently, for example, had to give up a part of its ownership to the government. On the other side, banks, they also give money, but often at a higher interest rate. And again, private banks, a higher interest rate than government banks. And because companies, investing in companies in such a difficult time is very risky, banks might be very lenient to give you the money that you might be needing to keep your head above the water. So this is in short how the virus outbreak has affected businesses. I hope you like it. If so, please hit the subscribe button and hit on the like button below. Thank you for your interest, and I hope that we'll be meeting each other and conversing further on in future videos. Take care, stay safe, all the best in the world.